Disclaimer: this episode discusses real, historical murders of entire families, including children. We mention murder, reincarnation, and my own personal thoughts, theories, and intuitive reflections, not confirmed conclusions. This show may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. As always, I approach these stories with deep respect for the victims and their families. Hey strangers! Welcome to Strange with Dani, spooky, mysterious, and strange. Tonight's episode is The House That Remembers Me. It's different, not because it's violent, not because the house is infamous, but because this is the first story that didn't just interest me, it recognized me. I didn't find this house, it found me. I don't really remember the first time I heard about the Villisca Axe Murder House. I remember the feeling, that quiet, internal tug, not curiosity, recognition, not fascination, familiarity, like walking past a stranger who knows your name. I've always been drawn to it, not in a thrill-seeking way, not in a let's go get scared way. I mean, I'd be down for that too, but it's more than that. More like, why do I know this place? And if you know me, you know I don't believe in coincidence. And that belief really locked itself in one night at work. I was alone, it was late, dark out, I had my earbuds in, I hit play on a podcast that I regularly listen to. Just the first episode in the list of unplayed episodes, it was about Villisca. So I thought, okay, nice, because I've always been fascinated with it. After about an hour, I finished it, switched shows, different host. Again, just the first episode in the list of unplayed episodes, and that episode was also about Villisca. I remember just sitting there, earbuds still in, not scared, but watched. Because what are the odds? 2 separate shows, different hosts, different recording dates, same house, same night. And I didn't choose them, I just hit play. That's the part that won't leave me alone. And I'm a debunker. My first thought was, both shows recorded an episode around the same time because it's around the date of the murders, or something. But it wasn't the case. They weren't recorded anywhere near the same time as each other, or the dates of the murders. Now, that felt like something reached out. Before anything happened, the house was ordinary. A Sunday night, fresh air through open windows, sheets pulled up to chins, children drifting into dreams they wouldn't finish. That's the part that gets me. Nothing was wrong yet. No screams, no warning, just the sound of a small town going to sleep, while something else stayed awake. Let's talk about what happened there. It was Sunday, June 10th, 1912, a quiet Iowa town, unlocked doors, windows open to the summer air, 8 people asleep inside the house, 6 kids and 2 adults, the parents, their 4 kids, and 2 neighbor girls. None of them woke up. The killer entered silently. The most common theory is that the killer or killers got in while the family was at a church event that night and waited in the attic until the family was asleep. Then moved slowly from room to room. Imagine how quiet that house had to be. 8 heartbeats, all slowing at different times, and a killer walking between them. No radios, no traffic, no hum of electricity. Just breathing, floorboards, and the sound of someone moving who didn't belong there. If you were awake, you would have heard it. They weren't loud, and from what we can tell, none, except maybe one, ever heard the killer. Using the blunt end of an axe on everyone but the father, he got the blade, and he also got the worst of it. It appeared all but one had been killed in their sleep. The 2 neighbor girls slept together in a spare room, and one of them was found with a wound on her arm, like a defensive wound. She was laying sideways across the bed. Her underwear had also been removed, and her legs were positioned in a way suggesting some sort of SA, but allegedly, later examinations determined that was not the case. We can only hope. Afterward, they covered the mirrors, and then something that always sticks with me. They took their time. They washed up. They stood there, long enough to think. They may have taken bacon out and made some food, but didn't eat it, as untouched food was found sitting on the table. This wasn't chaos. This was deliberate. The following morning, the neighbor lady realized that the family hadn't done their chores. Like, let the chickens out, which was not like the family. So she let the chickens out, tried knocking on the door. After getting no response, she got a hold of the man's brother. He came with a spare key. After there was no answer to his knocks, he let himself in, while the neighbor waited on the porch. Then he discovered the neighbor girls. He sent the neighbor for help. No killer was ever found. People who have walked through that house say the same things. The air feels heavier upstairs. Children's voices echo where no one is standing. Pressure on the chest, like someone reminding you where you are. In the attic, almost everyone says the same thing. You don't want to stay there long. Not because it's scary, but because it feels like you've arrived late to something already happening. The Villisca house still stands today. It doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It waits. And sometimes, it feels like it's waiting for me. The longer I sat with the Villisca house, the more I realized something. It doesn't feel alone. And it wasn't the only place that ever gave me that strange sense of familiarity. There's another location on the other side of the world that's always unsettled me in the same way. Hinterkaifeck, a remote farmstead, Germany, Friday, March 31st, 1922. Before anything happened there, the family heard footsteps in the attic, not once, not briefly, but for days. Never finding anyone or anything. Tools started disappearing, things like keys moved around the house, even though no one in the home remembered moving them. A newspaper from town showed up inside the house, even though no one in the family had gone into town. Footprints led to the house, but never left. And still, the family stayed. When the murders finally happened, 6 people were killed with a farm tool. 2 grandparents who owned the farm, their widowed daughter, her 2 kids, aged 7 and 2, and their new housekeeper, who had just arrived within days of being murdered. One by one, they were lured into the barn, all but baby Joseph, the 2-year-old. He was found deceased in the house, in his bed. And here's the part that never leaves me. Whoever did it didn't leave right away. They tended the animals, and just like Villisca, they cooked food, and they stayed, possibly for days afterwards. They vanished, different country, different decade, same feeling, the same silence. Fear rushes, comfort stays. Why was the killer so comfortable? How many times had they done this? We will never know. What connects Villisca to Hinterkaifeck isn't just the weapon. It was entire families, in the night, making themselves at home before moving on silently like a ghost in the night, never to be found. The pattern I can't ignore, and I don't think it's coincidence that these are the exact same kinds of stories I've always felt drawn to. Not just curious about, but drawn to. What we never talk about is who someone like this is between houses. Sitting in rail cars, counting coins, watching towns disappear through dirty windows. Nobody watching him, nobody remembering his face. Just another man passing through. That's where monsters hide best, in places no one thinks to look. My personal theory, and let me be clear, this isn't proven, it's something worse. It's a pattern, and patterns don't form by accident. This is my intuition layered over history. The patterns I notice over proof, and sometimes that's where the truth is. This is my belief. I believe a serial killer, possibly American, possibly German, spent years traveling through railroad towns in the U.S., murdering families in their homes while they slept. Rail towns were perfect, Arrive after sunset, choose a house near the tracks, wait, kill while the town slept, leave before sunrise. Movement was safety. Stillness got you caught, so he never stayed still. I believe he avoided capture by skipping town immediately, blending back into rail traffic, where faces were unfamiliar and questions were rarely asked. And I don't believe his goal was robbery, not really. I think he just took enough. A little money, a small item of value, never enough to raise alarms, never enough for the crime to look like theft. Only enough to get to the next town. And I believe he did this over and over again, practicing how to enter unnoticed, practicing how to move through sleeping homes, practicing how to kill without chaos, practicing how to disappear. At some point, I believe he hopped the big pond. The early 1900s made that possible. Passenger records were incomplete, names could be altered, people vanished simply by leaving. And once in Europe, I believe he continued moving, possibly committing murders before reaching where we now know as Hinterkaifeck Farm. By the time he arrived there, this wasn't new to him. That's why Hinterkaifeck feels different. There, the killer didn't rush, he didn't flee immediately. He stayed. He fed the animals. He ate meals. He lived inside the home for days after the murders. That doesn't feel like a confidence gained overnight. That feels like someone who had done this many times before. I believe Hinterkaifeck wasn't the beginning. It was the result of years of experience. A point where the killer felt comfortable enough to remain inside the silence he created. And I don't believe it ended there. I believe he continued moving, possibly committing more murders after Hinterkaifeck, always traveling, always disappearing, never staying long enough to leave a trail. Not a drifter, not a vagrant, a traveler. Someone who understood that motion was safety, that stillness got you caught. And when I look at crimes like Villisca Axe Murder House, I don't see isolated horrors. I see stops along a route. My soul memory theory. I don't claim to know who I was in another life, or if I even was anyone connected to these places, although I feel it's very likely. Maybe I was a victim. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I wasn't a witness. Maybe I was something worse. What if that's why I understand the quiet? Maybe that's why I'm drawn to both places. What if that's why the theory comes so easily? Maybe deep down, I know. But I do believe this. Some trauma doesn't stay put in time. Some memories don't belong to a single person. They belong to locations. And sometimes, certain people feel that pull more than others because something recognizes them. Those two podcasts weren't a coincidence. Were they confirmation? Not a voice, but a subtle message? Just a gentle, unsettling nudge that said, pay attention or come back? Villisca isn't unique. Hinterkaifeck wasn't a fluke. They're part of a quiet circle of places where something happened and never fully left. And if you've ever felt the same pull towards a house, a story, a moment in history, maybe you're not discovering it. Maybe you're remembering. Sometimes I wonder if places don't just exist in time. What if they wait for the souls to return? We talk a lot about past lives as faces, names, and bodies, but what if it's not just that? What if past lives leave behind locations, not just identities? Because I've noticed something. The things that terrify us the most aren't always new fears. They feel familiar, like we didn't learn them, we recognize them. Maybe that's why certain places call to us, why some houses, roads, or landscapes feel heavy or like home, even when you've never been there. Not because something's there now, but because we were there before. I think signs, the stories that repeat, the names that follow us, the way certain places keep showing up in our lives, might not be messages from the outside world at all. They might be memories trying to surface. Dreams that don't make sense, fears without a clear origin, that sudden pull towards a place you've never seen, but somehow already know. Maybe the reason certain houses won't let you go is because you never left. So if something keeps finding you, ask yourself carefully, is it calling? Or is it recognizing you? And if somewhere feels like home, if something keeps finding you, maybe ask why. Thank you for spending a little piece of your present life with me on Strange with Dani. Out of all the timelines, all the places you could be, you chose to be here, and that means more than you know. If this episode stayed with you, like, follow, and share the show with a fellow stranger that understands sometimes we're not discovering stories, we're remembering them. Until next time, pay attention to the signs, stay strange, and keep looking, because maybe somewhere is waiting for you.